Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It Friday. So this week we're going to be working on something that I've really wanted to do for a long time, and finally the opportunity has presented itself. So as you can see here on my workbench, I have two R.O.B the robots, and for those of you too young to know about this, this is an accessory that was released with the original Nintendo Entertainment System, and R.O.B was really part of the initial marketing campaign by Nintendo to just get the NES into people's homes and disguise it as something that wasn't just a video games console, but like some kind of interactive electronic device. So R.O.B here could receive input from your CRT, and that would cause him to move in certain directions. And so there were two games released, Gyromite and Stack Up, that were designed to specifically interact with R.O.B. I always wanted one as a kid, and this is my personal one. I got it much later in life, and it's fully working, and they're, I don't know, they're cool. They're not exactly fun to play with, but it's definitely an interesting thing to experience. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on this R.O.B over here. As you can see, he's a little bit different from mine, and that's because this guy is from Japan. He has the Japan Famicom style coloring. The white plastic is cream colored, and you know, his arms are red, and so this is totally consistent with the plastics used in the original Famicom, whereas my R.O.B here is a North American version, so he's got his NES colors. So this guy has some issues. As you can see, he moves his arms up and down on its own. That's a clear sign that there's a problem, and going side to side also. He does that without any input, whereas if you look at mine, you can see that mine does not move, and that's the sign that there's a fully working R.O.B. Like, these arms and the body shouldn't move. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to take one of these things apart and how to fix it. Surprisingly, they're quite easy to fix, and it's a fun little project to do. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so I've got R.O.B here perched on top of my chair. Not exactly the best thing, but good enough for now. And I've got Gyromite on the screen. So yes, this is Robot Gyro, which is also Gyromite in North America. They made the game so quickly for the North American market that they never bothered to change the name over to its American name. So regardless of whether you're in Japan or the United States, it's called Robot Gyro when you start it up. So I've got 4 AA batteries at the bottom of R.O.B, and that's what you need. And so when you turn them on, this is what he does. He does this calibration movement. So he moves up and to the right. And you can see right away that there's a problem with the up and down. So the gears are slipping. And so that's a clear indication that we've got to work on the gears on this guy. But let me show you how to test a R.O.B so you guys can get a feel for, you know, how this guy works. So the first thing you can do is you can go to this this test mode. And I'm not sure if you can see. No, you probably can't. So when you get into this mode, R.O.B's LED on the top of his head will turn on. That's the first sign that there's communication between the Nintendo and R.O.B. So now we're going to go into Direct. And in here we can manually control R.O.B using the D-pad of Player 1. So if I hit right, he moves right. I move left, he moves left. The A button opens. B button closes. And he does go up and down. But what I've found after testing this out is that the up and down is very slippery, so the gears completely slip and it'll just drop completely to the bottom, as you guys already saw. And the right and left movement isn't good either, so sometimes it'll slip on going right and left. Like I'd said at the start of the video, if you are able to move R.O.B at all, like right to left like this, or up and down like this, then it's a clear sign that there's an issue with the gear trains for those movements. The one thing that is solid is the open and close, so that's good. So now, let's go ahead and take apart this R.O.B, and I'll show you what gear trains drive these movements and how to fix them. Alright, so to get started with working on R.O.B, we actually have to start from the bottom up. And so it can actually be kind of cumbersome because you kind of have to have him like held upside down like this. Sometimes I use books or something just to kind of prop him up while I work, especially when I get this part of him open, because there's a whole set of gears here, and if you're not careful, they can just go flying all over the place. So to start, we're going to just remove a bunch of screws. There's 4 on the periphery here, and there's 2 in the battery compartment over here. Those are the same kinds that are used by the NES, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those now. Okay, so the first set of gears that we're going to be looking at are contained within this box over here. So this box here is what controls his side-to-side movement. And as you guys saw in the demonstration earlier, there are issues here where if you just move him, he will rotate side to side. So this isn't not as bad as the up-down, like this isn't really slipping, but I'm gonna address this anyway because it's just a matter of time before this fails just as badly as the up and down movement. Over here in this little PCB, this is actually Rob's brain. So all of the circuitry controlling Rob's behavior is located right down here at the bottom, and you can see that there's some ribbon cables, and these go all the way up to his head to the photodiodes that are up here that detect the flashing images that come from the CRT. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove these screws, and then we're going to open this up and take a look. Okay, so I have opened up the box, and so you can see that this is how Rob's gear assemblies look like to turn him left and right. So you've got a motor here, which is activated, of course, by his brain, which is down here. And once that spins, it runs through a train of gears, and those gears ultimately turn this large gear, which I can't really show too well, but it's down here at the bottom. That, in turn, is going to... Oops, I lost some stuff. That in turn spins this larger gear train here, and that makes him move left and right. So as I kind of already inadvertently demonstrated, it's very easy to lose these. They fly off without too much effort. So take a photograph before you open things up and make sure you have a clear understanding of how it all assembles so that when you do inevitably drop something, you can put it back the way it's supposed to be. For now, I'm going to leave that guy off. Okay, so the source of our problems is actually this train over here. So you see how there's this like metal piece that surrounds this particular gear? So normally, Nintendo applied some kind of adhesive to the gear here, and it's supposed to be stuck to this piece of metal. This piece of metal is fused to the rod, which means that when the rod turns, this turns. They shouldn't turn separately from each other. However, over time, the glue that attaches this metal piece to the plastic gear, it just, weakens because this thing is almost 40 years old at this point. So when that weakens, then it no longer has control, and then the rod can move side to side as he pleases. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're just going to take this gear out, and we're going to apply some super glue inside of this section right over here. So we just got to be careful, and you're just going to use standard crazy glue, like not the gel type, but just the standard crazy glue. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that now and show you how to do that. And then that should keep this permanently attached to this and should make it so that when he turns left and right, that it stays stable. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so it's about an hour later, and I gave this thing plenty of time to dry, so I'll just show you what the end result is. So you can see that now if I take this gear and I twist it, the metal twists as well. The same is true for this little guy here, but in my experience, these normally stay adhered to the metal. I don't know what the difference is, but this guy almost always is not the issue. It's almost always this assembly here, which is the metal mixed with the plastic. And so yeah, you can see I twist it and the whole assembly moves. Meanwhile, this guy spins freely. And so that's what you want to achieve. Don't be impatient and, just reassemble this thing and test it like 10 minutes later. Like seriously, give the crazy glue plenty of time to dry off so that it works just fine. So I'm going to go ahead, put this one back in, and then we're going to move on to the other gears that control the up and down movement of the robot. Okay, so I've gone ahead and reassembled the top, and I have Rob completely upside down here. So you can see his bottom is over here, and his standing on his head. And right now we're going to be focusing on this little midsection over here. So what you've got to do is, seriously, like I said before, try to find something to prop him up. You really can't leave him like this. It's precarious. Hold him up with something, or on your lap, and then take a Phillips screwdriver, and you've got to remove these 6 screws. You've got to keep them this way because if you try any other way, all of the gears that are here, which are complicated, are all just going to go flying, and you're not going to know how they're assembled. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now off camera because it's just difficult to film this. And then we're going to open him up, and I'm going to show you how things look in here and what to do next. All right, so I've taken the screws off, and right now I have the top half of that plastic cover held in place with a rubber band, which you can see right here. And so you're gonna have to work this way, like get at least one rubber band, maybe two, and use it just to keep this top piece out of your way, because if you don't, it's gonna drive you crazy. So you can see here's Rob's arms. I already moved one off, and so I'm just gonna take this second one off because they're just in the way at the moment. And so you can see that there's a similar logic applied here as there was to the bottom piece that I was showing you before. So now you've got two motors, one here on the left, and then you've got a train of gears going over to this main axle over here. And this side handles the opening and closing of the arms. So given that the arms don't just push and pull on their own, they seem to be working just fine, we know that this half is okay. There's no issues there. On the right-hand side, this is the part that we need to work on. So this motor controls the up and down movement. And just like before, you've got an assembly of gears leading up to this main axle over here. And you'll notice that just like before, we have these gears with these pieces of metal that are surrounding them. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy out because this is what we're going to have to work on. Okay, so now let's take a look at this gear assembly. And so you can see that you've got a couple different gears. The ones on the end here, you can see they move freely, and that's the way they're supposed to. We've also got two gears on the extreme ends, and those should be bonded to the metal, so those should not move when I twist things around. And if I do, they rotate the metal itself. And then over here on the left, we have a gear assembly which looks very much like the one that moves them side to side. And this one is bonded to the metal, and that's what it's supposed to be, and it's looking just fine. That's there's no reason to touch that one. It's doing the right thing. However, over here on the right-hand side, this is what moves Rob up and down, and you can see that there's something wrong with it. So for one, if you look on the right-hand side, you can see that the metal piece has come loose off of the gear. It is supposed to spin like this, so what you're seeing about it spinning is kind of normal, but it's actually a little bit too wide when the metal piece on the right here is put away. And I can also tell that someone glued here on the left-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and work on this gear and add some crazy glue to the right-hand side over here to get this thing looking good again. Okay, so some time has passed and everything has dried out, and so I wanted you just to see what this gear is supposed to look like when it's glued properly. So you can see over here on the right-hand side that I've crazy glued it on this side now so that it's stuck to the plastic gear, and I added some more glue over here on this side too, because there was some glue already, but I wanted to do some more just to make sure that it was, like, you know, really bonded in there. And you can see that it does move around. But you can see that all of these pieces are bonded to each other so that when I spin one, I spin the other. So this will basically go onto the track and move Rob up and down. This guy is going to move freely, like I'd said, and then as I'd mentioned before, these should be stuck to the metal. All right, so now that that's all done, let's go ahead and assemble Rob and see if this gluing has done the trick. Alright, so I've gone ahead and reassembled Rob, and as you can see, reassembling him can be kind of a pain in the butt. All the gears interlock, and sometimes when you put one back in, it dislodges another one, so it's a time-consuming and kind of annoying process. But eventually you'll get everything put into place, including the arms, and you can screw it down and give it a preliminary test. Sometimes this first test may or may not work, so you might have to go back in and maybe add more glue or do something to change it. But let's see what happens this time. So we've got Gyromite open. We're going to go to this direct test. And let's see what happens. All right, that's good. Yeah. All right, so it looks like all 6 movements are working fine. So I'm just going to mess around with it a little bit more, and I'll come back in a bit and let you know if this was a success. Alright, so we're back, and I'm using the 8-bit Xmas homebrew cart by Retro USB, and I love this thing because it can make R.O.B dance to Christmas carols, which I think is just hilarious. So R.O.B seems to be following the instructions and dancing his heart to his heart's content, so I would call this a success. So yeah, if you guys like this kind of content, then consider subscribing to the channel. I've got videos out like this every Friday, and then of course if you've got a R.O.B that you want fixed or anything else, you can reach me directly at oneuprestorations.com. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!